Welcome back to Primary Source China Investment. Peng.guo and I are here this week with show S4, and we wanted to talk a little bit about the objectivity around some of the grand plans that China's leadership has announced over the past few years, because we need to see through into the investment thesis, because investors are creeping into two very separate and distinct corners, permanent bulls or permanent bears. And this polarity doesn't match well with successful investing. You know, it's easy to walk down the streets of new Chinese cities and marvel at the glass, steel, and infrastructure. And it's also easy to be incensed regarding the origin of COVID and the lack of transparency. So it's understandable why these two groups exist, but we have to look objectively at the success and failures of policies to find opportunity. And the headlines about bringing the population out of poverty, the number of billionaires, the size of the economy, the infrastructure are all bull cases. And Beijing continues to make huge proclamations on all sorts of things, such as chip-making ability, farming, energy independence, education, and so on. Our job is not to speculate on the success or failure, but what industries and firms benefit when these plans are made. And we're going to start with something that's not divisive. We're going to start with football or soccer or zuchou if you prefer. Xi Jinping loves the sport and even had 3 wishes when he became China's leader: make, host, and win the World Cup. There was a 50-point plan to get China there, including making the sport part of elementary school education, building thousands of pitches. That didn't turn into success on the field for the men's team, and it appears that the great soccer experiment is coming to an end. The highest paid foreign players have left, coaches are gone, some of the team sponsors had to cut way back as a result of COVID and property losses. What didn't stop, and this is the important point here, is the sponsorship. And a quick glance of the recent FIFA World Cup sponsors finds 3 of the total 7 names are Chinese companies. As you may have assumed, the Chinese men's team didn't make it to Qatar, but Hisense, peng.guo, and Vivo did, and that's the important part here. Peng.guo, what are your thoughts on that?
I think everybody knows for that World Cup, except the football, soccer player, and all the Chinese company, or shows in some way. Yeah, that's really like the long-term story. So everybody knows what caused the problem, and I think people understand the problem, but it's harder to solve the problem. That's the problem.
Well, you can't force a, well, I mean, it did work in a lot of other Olympic endeavors for the China's national team in terms of gold medals at the Summer Olympics, at least. But forcing a global soccer team is just didn't happen. And despite throwing tons and tons of money at it, but I think from an investor perspective, you can look at these sponsors, and you pull a chart of Hisense and peng.guo, you're going to be pretty shocked at the performance. And I think that's the important thing here. You know, and the point is not everything works out, right?
That's right. You have a good wish, and that doesn't mean it's durable objective. And also, that's probably everybody have the different roadmap.
The other thing is, you know, politicians do say a lot of things, and despite what a lot of people believe, you know, Xi Jinping still has to answer to the people or to the Politburo. You know, he does have to answer to people, and you know, he's got a lot of ideas. But let's rewind the clock a little. In 2013, Shanghai 2020 was launched to promote the city as a global financial center. The Lujiazui Free Trade Zone opened up. Renminbi internationalization was still a popular refrain. Fast forward a decade later, and Shanghai just fell behind Los Angeles in terms of financial centers. And usage of the renminbi for trade settlement is lower now than it was in 2021. But that doesn't mean that some financial services companies in China didn't have fantastic runs. A company you and I have talked a lot about is China Merchants Bank. Go pull a chart of China Merchants Bank against the CSI 300, and you'll see what we mean.
Overall, China has like the different goal in a different phase. So I think right now, compared to like the not talk about the 30 years ago, even talk about the 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That's a huge of the change. And set up a goal and put the effort just one way. Another way is more like the growth. Like if you get like the financial center, you need like organic growth from market based on the demand. I think right now, government really want a high level. They want to get most of the things under control. They want to get scalability. They also encourage the growth of the market. That's why they have some cycle, the policy. Sometimes they have the ties, sometimes they have a loose policy. So it's also have a kind of the cycle. But the high level, as the no matter financial center or the individual companies, you have to pay attention to the policy and the governance environment, which is affect the company's operations.
Well, that's what investors have to do. They have to look through the policy, and just because something gets stated, just because it's part of a 5-year plan, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's looking through what might happen and what sectors and what industry sectors, companies are going to benefit. You know, I can remember China has built a passenger jet, and you know that was 12 years too late. You know, they promised that jet more than 15 years ago, and they're still trying to build it 3 years ago. So that was a huge delay. They talk about the erasure of poverty. You know, poverty is erased. No, there's 600 million people still in poverty. You know, the Belt and Road, a third of all Belt and Road loans are in default. There's also been huge political changes between, you know, the different leaders. I can remember in 2008, Hu Jintao visited Japan and was very wary of Putin because of failed arms deals and energy deals. Goals are good. And it's important to remember that there's no interrupted boulevard of green lights. So not everything is going to happen, even though somebody says it. Assessing which entities will thrive even when goals fall short is the key to long-term investor success. Like I said earlier, pull a chart of Hisense and Mengyo and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. Those are the things that investors should be looking at in China. It's not like, oh, China good, China bad. China's got to be good for Chinese people.
Yeah, you're right. China government that definitely work for the Chinese people. It's not work for other government.
Yeah, as soon as you realize that, you'll be a lot better off on the investment side.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Chinese officials and entire governance, so they still have the experience in the management in the different level. So they get promoted step by step. Most of the people are doing like that way. So they have experience to managing the society and entire market. They're very professional. They're very knowledgeable. So I think definitely it's not allow some no experience or no background people to managing to make the important decision. Otherwise, that would be a disaster. So we see a lot of the example recently. And I think overall, China right now is a high competition market. So like no matter it's a state-owned company or private company, international company, they're still market driven. So people looking for what's the demand, so how to supply to the clients. Otherwise, you can easily find the alternative service or product immediately. So I think that's give a lot of pressures to the companies, owners or operations to do business in China. That's why people feel they call a special word called 内卷. So that means the competition is very intensive.
Definitely. Well, we're going to leave it there for show SW. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.